Hello, well I've managed to rope Simon Norfolk, landscape photographer extraordinaire, who's going to be talking on the super stage in a little while, about 1:30 I think this afternoon, Simon. So what are you going to be talking about? What are you going to be showing people?
Well, I'm one of the few photographers who still have a career in editorial photography.
Okay.
So I thought I'd show some of that, you know.
Sounds good.
Old time's sake. Remember assignments from magazines? I'm still doing some work for magazines and I'm still enjoying it very much. I do a lot of work for National Geographic. I seem to be one of the few people who's still got some money for real assignments. I do some work for the New York Times magazine. So I'm going to show a couple of the assignments that I've done for Geographic that are all quite almost on the level of like small movies, really, in terms of the budget, the number of people involved, lighting, quite large production numbers, very large, for me, very large.
Okay.
More like kind of small adverts, really.
Well, I mean, that sounds quite different to me from my concept of what a landscape photographer might be. Yep. So, you know, I'm calling you a landscape photographer. You're much more than that, clearly.
Well, sometimes the landscape needs painting with light. Sometimes very dark, very far away. Very big things, you need a lot of light, so you need a lot of people. So I'm going to show a couple of projects I did for Geographic, particularly the archaeological work that I do, which is my speciality with them. And I'm very keen on the archaeology in everything that I do, my personal work and the editorial work that I do. And sometimes the only way to approach these landscapes, which are quite brown, quite bare, not a great deal to see, fascinating places, extraordinary, interesting places.
So what sort of places are we talking about then?
Mayan temples in Central America, and I did a long project for Geographic, Messainak, which is a Buddhist city in Afghanistan that was deserted in the 6th century and was all built on copper, on the mining of copper, Buddhist city, Buddhist civilization, and it's all about to be destroyed in order to make the way for a Chinese copper mine.
Oh, okay.
So it's all emergency archaeology.
Wow.
To make way for the mining to take place.
I mean, working in some of these locations must bring about challenges that you have to rise to. What kind of things do you have to work around?
Well, I mean, the Messainak project, which hasn't been published yet, but the Messainak project, obviously the first problem is the Taliban. It was in Taliban-controlled territory. So there was that negotiation. Afghanistan is a very bureaucratic country, so there was a lot of paperwork. And really, National Geographic are about the only people that will pay me to sit down and do paperwork. You know,
sure.
The weeks of paperwork before you even take a camera out of the bag. And a lot of magazines won't pay for that. And then the photography itself was very complicated. The landscape was very brown. The buildings were not very proud out of the ground, so quite difficult to photograph. Not a great deal of very solid artifacts. And also a very bad security situation whereby any artifacts that were being found were being removed immediately to the museum, right, because there was a big looting problem in the place. So multiple problems, all sorts. And then on the level of kind of kit and technology, you have to take stuff that is absolutely bulletproof, you know, really solid. There's no point going with some fancy Wi-Fi connected, you know, drone or something like that. You need really simple kit because, believe me, kit falls apart like crazy out there.
Okay, well, I don't want to turn into a kit geek, but what kind of stuff are you using then?
I use just a very basic digital camera, a fancy one, I suppose, a phase one for the quality, but just a couple of lenses, because the lenses are going to fail anyway. I think I got through a couple of rear shutters and, yeah, just a trail of disaster.
So they're just going to fail, that's it? That's it, you accept that?
Stuff gets thrown around, a lot of dust, long, arduous journeys, very bumpy roads, so yeah, stuff just gets broken, yeah. Nothing you can do about it, really.
So apart from working in these kind of more extreme conditions, you know, are you to be found in some of the more typical landscape locations like Iceland, and you know, enjoying a more leisurely and pleasurable experience for your work?
Well, tomorrow morning, actually, I'm going to be in a mass grave in the centre of London.
Okay, tell me about that. That sounds a little bit unusual.
It's a beautiful one. It's outside Liverpool Street. Part of the excavation is to do with Crossrail. And they've found a medieval mass grave, plague deaths, 3,000 bodies they found. And they're in the street outside Liverpool. They're actually under the road outside Liverpool Street Railway Station.
Wow, yeah, I had heard of that. So what? Obviously, you're going in to take pictures. What you know what you're going to take pictures of when you get there? Have you been and had a look at this?
Yeah, I had a recce last week, but the archaeology is moving very, very quickly through there because the engineers are waiting to build tunnels on there. So the archaeologists have to move really, really rapidly. So I'm not quite sure what I get to see, but I'm told that there will be at least a couple of hundred exposed skeletons and some other remains from the structures of what was Bedlam Hospital, which was the world's first mental hospital.
Absolutely.
Bedlam from Bethlehem, and then it was moved to what's now the Imperial War Museum, and it was kind of model for all mental hospitals. And this was a plague burial pit, probably about 1450 through to about 1600, where they were burying plague bodies. So there's 3,000 bodies there.
That sounds amazing. I mean, it also sounds like it's quite pressured work, because I know you're going to have these developers who are counting the cash, literally ticking away until you get in there, I guess, to photograph it and to document it. So do you feel that pressure? I don't want to worry you too much, but I want to see a little bit of fear on your face.
On the last job, I got threatened by the Taliban, so I'm not bothered by some developer.
You never know, do you, Simon? You never know. So, as I say, we're talking about your, if you like, your National Geographic work, that kind of stuff, but a lot of people walking around the show, maybe coming to your talk, are also, you're the keen amateur landscape photographer. Did you get into landscape photography in that way, or where did it start for Simon?
Well, at college, I went to college. I studied at Newport, the famous documentary photography course at Newport in South Wales. Although for a long time I was a photojournalist, and then it was only really when I went to Afghanistan that I started to photograph the landscape itself, because it just seemed to me that war photography, that conventional war photography, was kind of exhausted, was saturated, certainly way too many people doing it, and also that it was starting to repeat a bunch of cliches, and I didn't really want to go down that path. And by moving towards landscape and using landscape to tell the story of what happened in a place like Afghanistan seemed to be fresh. This is 2001. I think that nowadays it's also become cliched, I think. But in 2001, it seemed to be like a new way to talk about the devastation on the landscape. And I'm very interested in technology and the effect that technologies have. And obviously, there's no greater technology at work in the world than military technology, and the way that it changes landscape, violently, explosively, I find intensely interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it sounds to me like your style is quite different to the pictorial type of approach that your typical sort of enthusiast tries. Do you ever go for the pure pictorial style of photography?
I do some travel photography for assignments. I did a job last week in Italy, just a straight travel job really. So yeah, I can do that too. But for me, it's important about the content, about what you want to say. And we're only going to be on this earth once, and it's important to me that I talk about the political things that interest me, particularly the war in Afghanistan. Let's face it, it's our government and our taxes that are involved there. So to not talk about those things to me seems to be just a criminal waste of our being on earth.
Okay, so do you do lots of these talks, the nature of the type of the thing you're going to be doing today, or
at this trade show? No, never.
Okay, so how are you feeling about it?
Oh, it's fine. I'll just talk about the things that I care about. It's easy. If you care about it, it's easy.
Yeah. If
it's sincere and you have to make it up, I guess it's probably quite hard. But I don't have a problem talking about the things that concern me.
Okay, and I know, today is sort of focusing at the show here on pro photography. Have you seen the world of professional photography change a lot during your career, and if so, how?
Yeah, no, enormously. I started out doing day jobs for the Sunday Telegraph and the Daily Telegraph, portraiture, and running around town, photographing at news events and this kind of thing. And then really in 2000, 2001, I had to kind of reinvent myself as a landscape photographer, and that was very fortunate because a kind of art market came along at the same time. And somehow I managed to reinvent myself as a sort of la-di-da, fine arts...
La-di-da?
Oh, well, absolutely la-di-da, yes.
I like that.
Have you seen the prices of my prints?
I don't have one, so clearly they're very expensive. I can't afford them.
I'll give you a discount.
Thank you.
No, I was really... about half of my earnings is from my print sales. And that's produced a really important kind of lifeboat to keep me doing the things that I'm interested in, really. The editorial and the documentary, and certainly the private projects that I do that are very much about the war in Afghanistan and these kind of things, that without that kind of support from below, from the print sales market, I really wouldn't be able to do what I do through editorial alone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's really important, especially at a show like this, where a lot of the time we're focusing, if you like, on the gear and the product, which of course is massively important, but the fact you're talking about print sales, at the end of the day, everything that you do, everything that every photographer does, all the money they spend on kit, comes down to that one thing, isn't it? It comes down to that image, and it's really important that work gets seen on walls, and it must be really gratifying for you that people are buying your prints, and your images are hanging, in homes around the country.
Well, even more than that, really, because a lot of museums, and particularly in the US, are buying my work.
Lovely.
and collectors are collecting and then donating to museums. And it's important to me, the idea that the works, that some kind of voice about what we think about the war in Afghanistan exists in 50 years' time, and 100 years' time. And I did a long project in Afghanistan that was looking again at the work of a photographer who was there in 1878, the great war photographer John Burke, who no one knows about, who made these fantastic, the first ever pictures in Afghanistan. So it appeals to me enormously, the idea that my pictures might have some kind of voice in 120 years' time, like his work did. You know, somewhere inserted into that historical record is this voice that was against the war and the rest of it.
No, absolutely fascinating to talk to you, Simon. Massively appreciate you taking time out. I know you've got to get yourself ready and mentally prepared for a little bit later on. I'm sure that there are going to be lots of people asking you questions after, so be prepared for those. They'll definitely be better than my questions. But for the time being, thank you very much.
You didn't do too bad.
Cheers.